Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you especially to Justice Kurian Joseph and the other members of the committee for inviting me. The theme before us is that of federalism. It is one of the most significant themes of our times. Federalism in India today is under stress from many directions. But I will restrict myself only to the challenges from delimitation and simultaneous elections. To set the context of my discussion, it is useful to keep in mind that India, like most democracies, operates with a predefined rules and pre-agreed set of rules. As a democratic polity, India has chosen a limited governance. Here, the people, as part of a social contract, surrender power to the states in the interest of progress, harmony, and lasting prosperity. This compact is formalized in the Constitution, which defines the state's purpose. The Constitution's main function is to limit state power, guarantee fundamental rights, and ensure accountability. Key to all this is the fragmentation of power. The Constitution ensures that power is split across three different axes: fundamental rights for the people, separation of powers between the legislature, executive, and judiciary, and a vertical division of powers between the union, state, and the local governments. This prevents the concentration of power. Here, the longevity of a polity is determined not by growth rates or efficiency, but by its ability to effectively channel powers. The concentration of power is a familiar demon. I need not remind you of the emergency. When the project of keeping power in check falters, the entire system is imperiled. Here I also recall Dr. Ambedkar's words on India's entry into life of contradictions. This lecture he delivered at the Constituent Assembly. He said, while we would have political equality through the one man, one vote principle, we would still have social and economic inequality. It was political equality which was supposed to bring about social and economic equality, and that too in quick time. But it's for some reason, political equality, which is a formal equality, effectively guaranteed by the Constitution through the right to vote, is in dysfunction, then the entire enterprise of social democracy is in jeopardy. If there is a failure to regulate power, it is an invitation for oppression and repression to take root. Indeed, power tends to corrode freedoms, leading to the collapse of accountability institutions and the stifling of dissent. While the Constitution provides the institutional design, the representative character of the state is determined by politics, and elections ensure that powers keep circulating. In this context, federalism is sometimes understood only as a shared power, but also in fact involves the value of a citizen's vote. The issues of delimitation and one nation, one election directly impact the apportionment of political power between union and states. The central theme of federalism is the role of the people as a barricade against the concentration of power. The integrity of the electoral process is crucial for the national stability. In India, federalism embodies a commitment to diversity, decentralization, and protecting distinct regional identities in one country. There is a very interesting observation of late Meghnad Desai, who captured this very well, and I paraphrase. He said that India is a multinational shared civilization where every linguistic state considers itself as a nation, and yet each nation has a right to be part of Indian Union. This has enabled states to innovate and tailor governance to local needs and goals, and also resist authoritarianism taking root. Most importantly, distinct voices and interests are heard and represented. Lately, this balance is being tested. As power gets consolidated, the velocity and intensity with which the constitutional equilibrium is being unsettled has also increased. Federalism faces assaults from many fronts in plain sight. Language is weaponized. Partisan governors forget that they are primarily constitutional heads. Central investigating agencies are misused against state governments. Electoral roll revisions raise concerns about the integrity of elections. Indeed, the Election Commission can no longer be considered an independent body at all. The recent amendment bills to remove ministers detained on corruption charges is another brazen assault on federalism. In my view, it is only a pretense to tackle corruption. But with investigating agencies like the ED and CBI running amok, it is obvious that this bill is targeted at the opposition and regional parties. It can be abused to topple any government, and particularly weaker government. Instead of fundamentally reforming the anti-corruption mechanisms in India today, this appears to be a quick fix approach. In light of all this, our federal structure clearly appears to have been pushed to a breaking point. And to this, add to this bleak mix, the looming threat of delimitation, where the 2027 census might alter our political map, redraw our electoral boundaries, and undo the compact that binds our union. The goal of delimitation under Articles 81 and 170 of the Constitution is one person, one vote, one value. Uneven population growth can lead to situations of unfair voter numbers per representative, which distort the logic of one person, one vote, one value. To address this, Article 82 mandates delimitation after each census to adjust the seats to the changing population. After 3 rounds of delimitation, in 1971, political expediency and pragmatism instituted a freeze on delimitation. And this is due to be lifted after 50 years after 2027 census. Our population explosion has brought many concerns in its wake, including the size of electoral constituencies. Many MPs today serve electorates much larger than peers abroad. But domestically too, huge population disparities persist. South India is inarguably a success story in population control, unlike North India, the result of long-term investments in health, education, and awareness, leading to lower fertility rates, higher literacy, and, general overall, higher wealth and prosperity. The reality is that we have two distinct, practically divergent population growth trajectories in the same country. In the circumstances, a fresh round of delimitation after 2026 based strictly on the population is going to impact South India the most, which may end up being penalized politically despite having succeeded in its policy playbook. Consider some numbers. If total Lok Sabha seats remain 543 and are redistributed as per population, South India would lose the most, up to one-fifth, whereas UP, MP, Bihar, Rajasthan would gain hugely. If seats are increased to 848, that's a prediction as per the growth of population. So if seats are increased to 848, with proportional state representation maintained, states like UP will gain nearly 80% more, whereas Tamil Nadu will gain only 25% more, and Kerala will remain unchanged. There would also be an effective decrease in representation. Consequently, the South risk diminished political influence impacting their impact on policy or obtaining resource allocations. The debates around this are well known and oft repeated. The South says this is a punishment for success. They curbed population growth and became economic powerhouses. But Tamil Nadu and Kerala, which contribute significantly to central revenue, receive less in return, unlike UP and Bihar, which receive far more than they contribute. One could say to Kerala and Tamil Nadu that this is the price to pay to be part of a federal union of states. But it is equally true that this form of delimitation effectively incentivizes underperforming states and penalizes performing states. It is just not about economics, though. A potential power shift in favor of North portends that what many regard as a form of colonization by the Hindi heartland. With language already weaponized, this fear is not unwarranted, striking at nationally binding forces of unity and trust. There is another, sometimes overlooked dimension, that of potential harm to minority groups, both religious and socio-economic. Many delimitation exercises in Jammu and Kashmir and Assam, there were delimitation exercises in these two states recently. That already led to some gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is you delimit in such a way that a particular section, say minorities or Muslims, their votes would be divided and will have no effective value to their vote. So this has led to some gerrymandering with boundaries redrawn to dilute minority votes. Nationwide delimitation would worsen this, making this not as an issue of North versus South, but about equitable representation for all vulnerable groups. Other options, there are some options proposed by the experts, how to address this situation of imbalance of power between the North and South, or imbalance of power between those who are well placed and those who are vulnerable. What is suggested is that to offer equal Rajya Sabha representation to compensate for changes to the Lok Sabha. So if there are changes in Lok Sabha, South loses seats in Lok Sabha, they may be given some compensatory seats in the Rajya Sabha. But this would still require constitutional amendments and strong political consensus, neither being easy. It is also not likely to assuage South India's fears of shrinking national influence. Yet another proposal is to redistribute seats as per population eligible to vote. That is, those aged 18 years or above instead of the population. Today, the delimitation is on the basis of population of state. So the another suggestion is that take only the voters, number of voters who are eligible to vote, but see the position. So in general, South India is aging faster than the rest of India. In Bihar, half the population is 22 or above, whereas Kerala has half aged 35 or above. So if seats were readjusted by overall population, then Bihar votes would be more valuable than Kerala votes, defeating one vote, one value principle. For those who say that delimitation is just idle speculation and that seats will not increase, consider the sitting capacity of new Lok Sabha building, which is built in 2023. It is now 888. So it might seem a nice number that rolls off the tongue easily, but real politics suggest that the BJP government is highly inclined to increase seats, and soon. The timing is important because of the first past the post system, and this, you heard something about this system, which is not really, which doesn't stand with the one vote, one value system. So as we saw, the why I'm saying this, that this first past the post system is not consistent with one vote, one value principle. In 2014 election, the BJP received less than one-third votes, but won more than half the Lok Sabha seats. So, voters supporting smaller parties that do not win have little influence overall. This effectively defeats the one person, one vote principle, which means each voter has equal influences, which is really not happening in this country. But first past the post means each vote is not equal. So this is the position today that in effect, each vote is not have equal value. At this juncture, I also believe that the argument that delimitation for states that have succumbed in policy, be it healthcare, education, literacy, or wealth distribution, is a poor argument, because it cannot be the only argument that the South, which has controlled population, which has brought economic prosperity, should be punished for doing that. According to me, a more robust case is that of delimitation is treated as a threat to federalism and by extension to the idea of India itself. Constitutionally, after Keshwananda Bharati, federalism is deemed to be a part of the basic structure and cannot be tampered with or amended. In any case, the reality in India is that federalism is not a choice, but an essential necessity. It is meshed into the fabric of our identity. The idea of one vote, one value, though vital to our democracy, cannot be read in isolation and certainly cannot overcome the principle of federalism, federal equity, and non-domination of constituent units. As a subsidiary argument, it may be said that after having positioned population control as a national goal, punishing states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and others for having met that goal successfully would be ironical. The chilling message is that this would convey is that responsible governance invites political loss. The implication of this run deep and would shatter the trust between the center and states. Allowing demographic shifts to become a weapon for political dominance also goes against the principles of cooperative federalism. India has thrived thus far on the federal impact of sharing power, which must be protected at all costs. Minority representations are also at stake, and gerrymandering, as per past exercises have shown, risk silencing already vulnerable communities. In this scenario, therefore, the best solution seems to be to maintain the status quo. We maintained it for 50 years, maintain it for another 20 or 25 years, and give the states a chance to improve their healthcare, their population control policies. And then, what we have done for 50 years should be continued the for a at least for specific period. So this act is not as if North, South, or better still North or North Hindi Compact was written. So what is suggested by one of the leading writers, Mr. Yogendra Yadav, read this as embodied in Constitution. This divide of North, South, Hindi, non-Hindi, read this as is a part of the Constitution. And the Constitution wanted to protect federalism, and this could be a base for extension of the free speech continued for more than 50 years. So meanwhile, recognizing that imbalance exists, instead of rushing into census-based reallocation, perhaps we could commence a national dialogue involving all stakeholders to understand how delimitation will impact them. The idea of all stakeholders is significant because the fate of reservation of seats for women is also at stake. So what would happen to women's reservation after delimitation is also a question to be answered. So this issue will have to be addressed at the discussion which should take place between all stakeholders. Given all this complexity, this time not for the haste, but for political wisdom and seeking and obtaining broad consensus. While the threat of delimitation is real, it is not the only challenge to our federal spirit. The proposed 129 Constitutional Amendment Bill for simultaneous elections, that is one nation, one election, cloaked as if it's for efficiency, poses an equally grave danger. It links directly to delimitation, for both seek to redefine political power. Both threaten the core of our Constitution. Both risk weakening the voice of the voter and states. To briefly summarize, I will tell you what this one nation, one election scheme is under the 129th Amendment. The proposal runs something like this. India will hold simultaneous or synchronized elections across all levels of government, either on a single day or within a specific time frame, with a stated key objective of cutting election cost. So we have too many elections, so we must cut election cost. The time frame of an elected government remains 5 years. To address situations where Lok Sabha or state UT assembly is dissolved sooner than its full term of 5 years, the bill introduces a new category of elections called midterm election for unexpired term. In other words, a fresh midterm election will be held for a term equal to the remainder of the 5-year term. For example, if a state government is elected in 2025, its term would ordinarily be till 2030. But if it loses confidence after 3 years in 2028, a new election will be held and a new government will be appointed, but it will have a term only for 2 years, as the next election must necessarily be conducted in 2030 in order to maintain that synchronicity in the elections for Lok Sabha and state assemblies. This kind of midterm election is very novel, and it doesn't have any counterpart in anywhere in the world. On the face of it, and it is the very least, this proposal is fundamentally anti-people, for it takes away the prerogative of citizens of a democracy to vote in a fresh government for full term. The bill has many other problems, including granting unfettered discretion to the Election Commission to recommend deferring state assembly elections. So it gives a power to the Election Commission to not to hold election in particular state assembly or assemblies, even in the simultaneous elections of Lok Sabha and assembly elections. And there are some serious concerns about that. I will shortly discuss this with you. So regular elections and fixed government terms are bedrock principles with the voter at the center of the government. Please bear this in mind, that the voter is the center at democracy. Voter is at the center of this whole scheme of the constitutional governance. The Supreme Court has said that the voter is political sovereign and that as long as elections occur, the voter decides who governs. So it is your power. It is your power to choose your government. So therefore, in that sense, the voter is sovereign. In term that demands that election system be fair and produce true representation. Rules governing elections must include building trust in elections and leaders, ensuring equal footing for all parties, getting people to vote and holding representatives accountable. The proposed bill, however, tinkers with everything. It cuts the voters' bargaining power. Just consider that you are unhappy with a particular government which loses confidence after 3 years. But you get a chance, the voter gets a chance to boot out that party only for 2 years, not for the whole term. So this party is punished only for 2 years, which again can contest the next general elections, which is the idea of one nation, one election. Again, midterm election makes term variable. A midterm government's length is unknown until dissolution. So nobody knows what would be the midterm election, what would be the term of such midterm election, government elected by midterm election, because it is uncertain. As and when this house is dissolved, there will be new election. It can be after 1 year, it can be after 2 years or 3 years. It all is all speculation. An uncertain term prompts insecure government, which further harms election credibility, the House standing, and the quality of representation. Just consider, there is a government elected, all governments are elected for 5 years. And by reason of this idea of midterm election for unexpired term, a government comes in power only for 2 years. Would the standing of that government would be equal to the standing of a government which is elected for 5 years? So this uncertain term creates a serious issue for the voters. So the bill's proposed midterm election creates a house only, as you see, for the unexpired term. I believe that constitutional crisis is waiting to explode. Here, voter would effectively vote twice for the unexpired period first, and for a full term house, house, and that one house is dissolved for the remainder of the term. The bill's midterm election forcibly continues. What happens is, whenever a house is dissolved because of no confidence motion or any other reason, then though it was elected for 5 years, that 5 years has no meaning, because you are going to vote again. A new government will be chosen for 5 years. So that 5 years term has no meaning. But by reason of this proposed amendment, this period is forcibly going to be continued. So as I said, that these two types of government lack equal standing. And just consider what would be the position of a government which is elected only for 1 year or 2 years. So either they will adopt some reckless policies, or there will be policy paralysis, because they will not do anything with the fear that they might offend the voters. So this idea of a 2-year or 3-year midterm a government elected by this midterm election is really very problematic. Then they face shortened tenure, and therefore the legitimacy, I believe that the legitimacy of 2-year or 3-year government would be much less than a government which is chosen for 5 years. And this creates distortions in governance during the residual period. And as I said, that there will be many unfortunate consequences like a policy paralysis or reckless governance. So and they said, why they are doing it? They are doing it to cut the cost. But if you see this scheme, that whenever there is a early dissolution, there is going to be a midterm election. So you are actually spending more than what you spent for this present system. So there is no cost cutting. And imagine for a country like India, for what is more important, this cost of few thousand crores, or what is more important is the voters' right to vote and and to elect a government of their choice. So, and this is another existing concept is introduced by this particular bill, is that it proposes to bring all the legislative assemblies to the starting line so as to join the calendar of simultaneous elections. So whenever this simultaneous election is introduced, and that would be after the dissolution of a Lok Sabha, then all those assemblies, though they have not completed 5-year term, they will be automatically terminated. Maybe only once, but not because they lost confidence, but because the amendment says that their term must come to an end. And according to me, this en masse derogation of legislative assemblies, even though one time, is a direct assault on principle of federalism and is unworkable for precisely this reason. The bill, as I said, also empowers the Election Commission to defer election of any legislative assembly to a date of its own choosing, if it believes, and I'm quoting the words from the amendment, that the elections to any legislative assembly cannot be conducted along with the general election to the House of People. No guidance is offered for this endeavor. What are the guidelines for the Election Commission as to whether, in what circumstances he can defer the election of a particular assembly? There is no such guidance. And therefore, this power which is conferred on the Election Commission, or proposed to be conferred on the Election Commission, is completely arbitrary, and it confers unfettered discretion, which is anathema to constitutional democracy. In a separate but equally concerning matter, and I want to end this with, because this is a recent controversy, as the law presently stands, the government of the day has an effective veto in making appointments to the Election Commission. The Supreme Court ruled that it should be done by a committee, and government should not have a exclusive choice to appoint a chief election commissioner or the other election commissions. Now, that the Supreme Court judgment of a constitutional bench was nullified by passing a law which stands today, which gives power to, or majority to, the government to appoint people of their choice. Thus, granting such a power to defer the election of any state assembly would be well ill-advised. And we must not lose sight of the fact that Election Commission performs the role of a referee or an umpire. I want to tell this election. I saw that press conference of the Election Commission, and I was stunned by the tone and tenor of those officials. So they are supposed to be referee and an umpire. The office of the Election Commission ought to inspire confidence in the government of the day and the opposition alike. Both should have belief in this Election Commission because it acts as a referee. So unfortunately, the office is devalued and is brought in disrepute because of the actions by those who occupy it. But that is an aside. To return to the issue of simultaneous elections, the framers of the Constitution were perfectly aware that election would not continue concurrently. The first elections held after the independence, I think it's in 1950, so after the Constitution. So they were perfectly aware that is not going to continue. At some stage there will be a break. It will be, and it happened in 1967. But framers were never thought of introducing any machinery as proposed in 129th Amendment to have this kind of artificial idea of one nation, one election. Even if we assume that simultaneous elections are a good idea, the mechanism proposed in the current bill is hugely problematic. It is, in my opinion, it is completely unconstitutional and snowballs into distortions that would plague the voter, the elected representatives, as well as the quality of governance and the relationship between these actors. To me, it is clear that we must protect our federal compact at all costs. Both delimitation and one nation, one election are grave threats that are designed to centralize power and silence state voices. Federalism must endure. To abandon it would be to pay an unbearable price, including, among other things, a fractured union, weakened democratic accountability, and a betrayal of our constitutional spirits. By choosing federalism over everything else, we recognize that that is where India's true strength lies. Thank you.